In the Stirling Ranges of Western Australia, where temperatures swing 40 degrees in a single day and the terrain offers no mercy and no shade, Delta Force operators on exchange have reportedly requested, not been ordered, but requested, to repeat the Australian SASR's psychological pressure testing sequence a second time. Not because they passed, because they couldn't explain why they failed. That moment, quietly documented in joint exercise after-action reviews and confirmed by veterans from both units, is the starting point for understanding why Australia's special forces have built something the world's most powerful military didn't see coming. Day 1 begins with the issue of a number, a weapon, and a warning. No one will tell you how you're doing, and no one will save you from your own mistakes. The Australian SASR selection course is 21 days long, but for most, it's over far sooner. Candidates carry packs that routinely tip the scales at 35 kilograms, sometimes more, over distances that stretch beyond 20 kilometers in a single night. The terrain is indifferent. The instructors are silent. There is no encouragement, no feedback, and no visible scoreboard. Every decision, every misstep is logged, but the candidate is left to interpret the silence. The core of the process is not simply physical endurance. It's the absence of external validation. Candidates move through a series of loaded marches, night navigation, and obstacle courses, often with only a few hours of broken sleep. During the infamous no feedback block, instructors observe but do not intervene. There are no corrections, no hints, no reactions, only the relentless progress of the course and the growing weight of uncertainty. It is here that the concept of self-directed failure recognition takes shape. Candidates are forced to judge their own performance, to recognize when they have lost the route, missed a checkpoint, or simply run out of energy. The only way out is to self-report, to voluntarily withdraw, and to explain that decision in front of their peers and assessors. For some, this honesty comes as a relief. For others, it's the hardest moment of their military careers. The psychological toll is amplified by the physical. Navigation exercises stretch deep into the night, with distances that can reach 76 kilometers over the first 10 days. Packs grow heavier as water and rations are added. Sleep drops to as little as 2 hours a night. One former candidate, Lieutenant James McAllister, described the experience as the most disorienting 30 minutes of my military career, a reference to the period when lights are extinguished, all external cues are removed, and candidates are left alone with their thoughts and their doubts. He recalled losing all sense of direction, unable to tell if he was moving in circles or standing still. The instructors offered nothing. Only after the phase ended did he realize how far off course he'd wandered. By the end of the 3-week selection, the numbers speak for themselves. Out of an initial intake of around 130, only about 26 make it through, a pass rate of roughly 20%. The majority self-select out, unable or unwilling to continue under conditions where failure is not announced but must be recognized from within. This is not about who can march the farthest or carry the most weight. It's about who can admit, under extreme pressure, that they have reached their limit, and who can do so before the mission or their team pays the price. Australian SASR selection wasn't born from theory, but from the hard lessons of 3 operational eras. In Vietnam, SASR patrols slipped through the dense jungles of Phuoc Tuy, often outnumbered and isolated, relying on silence and self-control. The regiment's first battle honor citation describes teams gathering intelligence for weeks, calling in airstrikes with enemy fighters close enough to hear. Survival hinged on calm judgment, not just strength, recognizing when a plan was failing, adapting in real time, and accepting the risk of retreat. After 1972, internal reviews codified these lessons. Stress inoculation became central, with long-range patrols, minimal resupply, and ambiguous missions woven into training. Failure recognition wasn't a theoretical exercise. It was a direct response to the psychological toll exacted by the field. By the late 1990s, a new threat emerged. The Sydney Olympics brought the specter of urban terrorism, demanding a shift in readiness. SASR was tasked with counter-terrorist operations on an unprecedented scale. Policy papers from 1998 to 2000 reveal a deliberate change. Selection would now focus on candidates who could maintain judgment under total uncertainty. The infamous lucky dip scenarios appeared: vague orders, shifting priorities, and no clear answers. Load weights increased, Sleep deprivation became systematic, and the observation block offered no feedback. The doctrine moved away from punishing mistakes, instead testing whether candidates could spot and correct their own errors before they spiraled. Psychological realism replaced tradition, driven by the unpredictability of modern threats. Afghanistan marked the next transformation. From 2001, SASR teams rotated through Uruzgan province, working alongside US and British special forces. The terrain was harsh, rules of engagement in flux, and supply lines stretched thin. Patrols lasted days, and enemy contact could come at any moment. After-action reviews and exchange records show a steady evolution. The happy wanderer phase grew longer and heavier. Water purification became standard, and ethical dilemmas were built into exercises. Joint operations forced SASR to refine its approach. Focusing on metacognitive accuracy, operators had to sense when they were off course, physically or ethically, and act before consequences set in. By 2011, when responsibility in Afghanistan shifted to Allied units, SASR's selection course stood as a record of necessity, shaped by the realities of 3 wars, and always recalibrated for what came next. The Australian SASR operates at a scale that is almost paradoxical for its global reputation. The regiment maintains a strength of roughly 600 personnel, including operators, support, and training staff. Out of this small pool, only a fraction have passed the selection gauntlet that begins with the Special Forces screening test, an initial filter that eliminates about 36% of applicants before the main course even starts. The real attrition, though, happens during the 21-day selection itself. Each intake begins with around 130 candidates. By the end, approximately 26 are selected, reflecting a pass rate that rarely rises above 20%. The majority do not fail in the traditional sense. They withdraw themselves, often during the silent, feedback-free phases where uncertainty is weaponized. Internal records show that after just 10 days, half the original group is gone, leaving a dwindling cohort to face the escalating demands of the course. Academic scrutiny has tried to quantify what makes this pipeline so effective. A 2009 study by the U.S. Army Research Institute compared completion rates under high stress, low feedback conditions. Candidates who scored highest in metacognitive accuracy, those able to recognize their own errors without external validation, completed at a rate of 84%. Those who relied on external cues finished at just 31%. The SASR selection process, by design, channels candidates into this psychological crucible, filtering for an ability that cannot be coached or faked. The numbers are stark, but they are not accidental. Every element of the course, from the regiment's tight personnel ceiling to the relentless self-assessment drills, is engineered to produce a unit where failure is not just possible, it is expected, and it is the operator's job to recognize it before anyone else does. Across the special operations world, Australia's selection model has triggered both emulation and debate. In 2014, U.S. Delta Force instructors quietly added a Mile 12 checkpoint to their own endurance march, an explicit nod to the SASR's practice of embedding silent decision points deep into fatigue. British SAS exchange officers have described the Australian no-feedback block as unexpectedly humbling, with one veteran, Sergeant Ellis, recalling that even seasoned instructors misjudged their own performance under the SASR's silent scrutiny. In after-action memos, Delta officers noted that candidates who excelled in traditional selection could falter when forced to self-report errors, a lesson that led to targeted adjustments in their own pipeline. This influence extends beyond tactics. The concept of operational metacognition, training operators to recognize not just physical limits but cognitive blind spots, has surfaced in academic studies and allied doctrine reviews. The 2009 U.S. Army Research Institute paper cited the Australian model as a benchmark for metacognitive accuracy under stress, highlighting that those who could identify their own failures were far less likely to make fatal errors in the field. New Zealand's NZSAS and Norway's FSK have both adopted elements of self-withdrawal and peer-reviewed failure detection, reflecting a global pattern among small nation special forces. Yet, the same psychological realism that sets the SASR apart has drawn sharp scrutiny at home. The Brereton report, released in 2020, investigated alleged unlawful actions by special operations personnel in Afghanistan. Its findings forced a national reckoning, not just over conduct, but over the culture that shapes elite soldiers. SASR leadership responded by reinforcing legal ethics training, while maintaining that the core stress inoculation and self-assessment drills remain essential. Annual audits and public reporting now shadow the regiment's selection, underscoring that the path to elite capability is inseparable from the demand for accountability. In this environment, the SASR's most significant export is not a single drill, but a mindset. The relentless expectation that an operator must know and own their limits before anyone else does. Today, elite units worldwide quietly recalibrate their own standards, studying a drill forged in Swanbourne's barracks. As modern conflict demands resilience over bravado, the SASR's doctrine, psychological realism, not myth, shapes the future of selection. In a world hungry for certainty, its true export is self-knowledge under pressure.